Hey, yo. Righty. What's up, everyone? No, we're getting rolling. Sometimes we have some stragglers, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have people who tune in more to the later upload. That's cool. Either way, it'll be a fun, chill day. Hope anyone who is tuning in either live or later in the recording that you're all doing well. And let us know how we can be better serving you, how we can be praying for you, what we can do to continue to provide a good ministry that's going to be glorifying to the Lord and is able to guide you and be of a blessing to you. I see we have a comment. Yehuda Israel. If you're here regarding the reaction to your video, that's going to be next Thursday. Tuesdays is more of a chill day, not debate day. Sorry, I'm multitasking at the moment. All right. See how we're doing, how we're rolling. Cool. All right. I know that currently at this time, there's no one, at least I don't see anyone on. Oh, we got 2 people on. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to our Tuesday stream. We are a man short today, but that's fine. The way we're structuring our Tuesday streams this month and for the foreseeable future, if it's a format you guys dig, is going to be a interactive Bible study type of thing. Hopefully we can begin to also expand into other social media platforms. So for those of you who are like on X, Twitch, excuse me, a variety of other things. Ooh, Caleb's calling. Yo.
So I'm driving, right?
You're on stream, right? Is this gonna be okay?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm driving, and I expect everything to be going normally. But then I get this notification that a half hour later than our stream is scheduled for, we go live.
Yeah.
Care to talk?
I made an announcement saying we're gonna be doing 30 minutes late.
I couldn't have viewed that. I was with my kid.
Yeah, no. We set it for 30 minutes late. I had a family thing I had to deal with, so just offset by.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I just all of a sudden the notification popped up on my phone. I was like,
Are you driving back now?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be joining us tonight or?
Probably not.
Oh.
I still have quite a bit left in my journey.
You can just hop on your phone and we'll just hear all the road.
I don't know how entertaining that would be, truthfully.
Yeah, maybe not. Mostly for me, not really sure for anyone else.
Yeah. All right, well, have fun.
Will do. Won't get too far ahead. All right. Yes. I think it's the second time Caleb's called me midstream, or I've had to call him. Anyways, welcome to anyone who is joining us for this stream where we're doing a interactive Bible study as we go. So, as you are coming in, if you're watching live with us, of course you get to participate. If you're not live, then you get to participate by watching and commenting. But it's not like I'll get to see you guys in real time action. So here we go. We're going to be doing a little study of the the new Exodus within the New Testament, specifically the book of Matthew. This was an idea that Caleb and I had a little bit ago. I would argue that obviously the better thing to do would be to do a full blown Exodus motif within the entirety of the New Testament, because you see it all over the place, considering that, well, almost every author is Jewish. And so they're very, very familiar with the Old Testament and Exodus specifically being in the Torah. And Revelation plays a lot into this as well. In fact, I have, let me see, one book here. And where's my other? It's here somewhere. I actually just saw, oh, here we go. I got these two books right here. One is called Exodus Old and New. So it's a nice little orange book by L. Michael Morales. And then another shorter one by Alastair Roberts and Andrew Wilson, Echoes of Exodus. And there's one more. I haven't read it yet, but I got it. Oh, here it is. Came out the same year, so it's kind of funny. It has the same exact name as this one. But Echoes of Exodus by Bryan D. Estelle. I have to start this one. These books, what they do is they kind of outline some of the basic motifs within the Exodus, and then they take you through the entire Bible, looking at Genesis. They looked at the rest of the Torah. They look at the rest, the Ketuvim and the Netivim, and then they look at the New Testament, and they look at some of the literature and the literary styles constructions that are very similar. We, however, are going to be focusing on primarily Matthew, because then it'll be a little bit of a shorter series and could be a good way to test and see if you guys kind of dig this format. And so we're going to be going through Exodus and Matthew, not in full, not like we're going to go through every single chapter and be like a full Matthew and Exodus study, just like looking for where those motifs are. So we're going to begin with Exodus. That's, of course, the place to start, considering that's the motif we're pulling from. So we're going to look at Exodus starting in chapter 1. Oh, my notes on the side over here real quick. No, wrong account, this account. I should be fine without my notes, but it's just nice to have them to keep me on track. So I'll keep checking chat as we go. And of course, we're excited to take anyone in as we get going. So looking at Exodus chapter 1, looking at our beginning structure, we got this first paragraph here where we have, these are the names of sons of Israel, and we get the different tribes of Israel. And we get this background where we have Joseph's already in Egypt, and now Joseph and all of his brothers and all the generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in number, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. So the fun thing here is we're seeing this beauty of the, okay. You're driving right now. You're driving right now, Caleb. You shouldn't be commenting. I got to start over. So within this first little bit here, we get this really cool thing of we're seeing the blessing from Genesis 1 being kind of like fulfilled in a sense, where God gives the blessing to humankind to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth. And this blessing is given to all of the creatures. But we're seeing that Israel is taking advantage of this blessing, which is a really, really cool thing. So again, we're building this motif, what's happening. So we have a little bit of a genealogy. It's not quite a genealogy, but it kind of is. We then get also this blessing that's being fulfilled, in a sense, this thing that's been bestowed upon them. And we're seeing Israel's taking full advantage of that gifting, which is a really beautiful, cool thing. Like, this should be a really exciting thing. The problem is that we have the next verse in verse 8. Then a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing came to power in Egypt. So this guy doesn't know about Joseph. He doesn't really care about Joseph. Maybe he doesn't know about Joseph, but Joseph doesn't really mean anything to him. And so he looks at this as like, look, he said to the people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they'll become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. Now, if you saw our Chaos Monsters episode regarding Exodus, I went over how this is really interesting and weird, because Pharaoh should be seeing this as like they have a good relationship with Israel already, right? They've had this good relationship. And so this should be an opportunity to build an alliance with them. They continue that alliance. But he sees it in this fear of like, they're going to rise up against him. They're too numerous. They're going to take us over. And he's not really happy with that. So he's in fear of his kingdom. Okay. So we have a king who is in fear of his kingdom. We have this blessing and we have this genealogy. Okay. Of sorts. It's not quite a genealogy like you have in Genesis, but kind of getting to the point. So he is concerned that they're going to break out and to get into war against him and to come against him and his nation. Primarily, probably his kingdom is what he's more concerned about, his power, than he is more about Egypt itself. And then we begin to, so they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar, with all kinds of works in the fields. And all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. So what's interesting here, again, I'm just kind of helping get the narrative together. This is also calling back to Genesis, which is really cool because we have the brick and mortar, which the last time we heard about brick and mortar was with the building of the tower and city of Babel or Babylon, where we have this is the descendants of Nimrod building their city, and they're doing this in opposition to God. They're trying to make their way up back to the heavens by their own means, and they're disobeying the idea of being fruitful, multiplying, and filling. So they're probably doing the first bit, but they're not filling in terms of like spreading across the whole earth and, ruling over it as they were designed to do so, as they were directed to do so. And so they're going against that directive. They're also now trying to go to heaven based on their own means, apart from Yahweh. And now we have this city that is frequently known as a place that is in conflict with Israel, and God separates them as judgment. So that's interesting that we have this thing here. We also mentioned that the location regarding the Sade, the field that they're working in. So we have this idea. The point being here is that this is supposed to be like all the fall narratives beforehand, but it seems to be getting worse. Now it's not just like a city that's just rebelling against God. It's a city that's rebelling against God by oppressing God's people, by oppressing people in general, enslaving them and treating them harshly, instead of seeking a way to kind of align these two nations, align these two people groups. They're finding ways to conquer to rule over them, to be ruthless towards them. They're trying to be Cain towards their Abel, if you will. And so we see, though, what's interesting is we get to verse 15. The king of Egypt said to where is it? Nope, yeah, 15. The king said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on delivery stool, if you see the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it's a baby girl, let her live. And so what's interesting is that we have that they're being treated ruthlessly. And now we're also getting this directive from the king to kill all these young boys, which, on one hand, it makes sense. You're trying to remove the kind of people that could come up against power in you based on their culture. At the same time, let's just say that this doesn't, to me, seem like the smartest thing entirely, because you kind of need a man, a woman, to produce said children. Now, of course, you could say you have Egyptian men sleeping with said women, but at the same time, you're gonna want to keep some distance unless they're super pretty, and there's all this weird thing like how are they going to go about this? You kind of need the boys to kind of do some of the grunt work, which means now you have to turn some of your people into slaves or go find more slaves. And so it's just this weird mess with the fact that he now is also directing this idea to kill all these boys, kill all these children. And then we have the midwives answer Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. This is shortly after they disobeyed. Verse 17, the midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? So the midwives, baller move, just go, we're not going to do this. That they pretty much, they're in more fear of God than they are of Pharaoh. And they let the boys live. And he's like, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? Midwives answered, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives are. Sure. He's like, they're just too quick. Too many children are just coming out. We can't keep up. It's just not going to work. And so God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. So the very problem that he's trying to prevent, it keeps happening. They're still being fruitful. They're still multiplying. And he's trying to work them hard to make sure that they don't come up against him. Which, when you make an enemy of someone, there's a good chance they're going to come up against you. And then he's now trying to kill off their offspring, specifically the males who could rule. And the midwives are not going to follow that. They're producing more children, and they're like, we just can't keep up. That's completely and totally the reason we can't keep up. That's why. There's no other reason, other than the fact that they fear God more than him. And then you have Pharaoh being like, okay, well, now we're gonna keep trying this anyways. So then the Pharaoh gave his order to all his people: every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. So now he's now hunting them all down. It's like, all right, this is all to his people. He's not trusting the midwives anymore. The people who were supposed to be dealing with the children that he's trying to trust. Obviously, they're not going to do what he wants them to do. And now he's saying, all right, all of my Egyptians, throw them in the water. Sup, chaos? Welcome to our first ever live interactive Bible study. All the Bible is a great verse. Yes. So yeah, we are in for those who are just coming in, Yehuda Yisrael 77910. FYI, we are not here to do that debate today. If you want to do that kind of debate thing, and by debate I mean if you want to hear more about the apologetics and polemics thing between Christianity and modern day Judaism, I would recommend you come to our Thursday streams. Tuesday streams are not the place for this. So if you have anything you want to comment about regarding the beauty of the text, regarding what we're reading right now, we'd love to chat about that. But if it's not on topic, what we're doing today is not going to be received and is going to be ignored. Just a heads up. So if you want to do debate, or you want to hear about the debates between Judaism and Christianity, come Thursdays. This Thursday we'll be doing a Kale's prepping a polemic, I believe, and then we'll be doing your reaction video the following Thursday. And then I have a project that I'm working on for the next Thursday, and then we'll do our final reaction for the month on the last Thursday. So if you want to get into that kind of stuff, come then. This ain't the time for it. Anyways, so this is really cool. So this is the kind of the format we got right now. So we have up here, we got this, not quite a genealogy, but genealogy-ish, I guess you will say. We're building up where the Israelites have left off since the end of Genesis, right? So they're in Egypt. We got the 12 tribes, and then we get the status of where things are at right now. The Israelites are being very fruitful. They're multiplying. The blessing from Genesis 1 and Genesis 6 is flourishing through the Israelite people. But this brings concern to the king, and the king desires to now deal with this. So what he does, he oppresses them, and then further down, we see that he's trying to kill all the little boys. We then have the fantastic midwives who come in and are told to do this one thing, and they don't do it. They basically say, we can't keep up with all the babies that are popping out because they're so blessed. They're so flourishing with this blessing that there's no way to keep up, Pharaoh. There's no way. And by that, they really mean, we're not doing this. We're not killing these boys, especially because, they're of our people. They're of God's chosen people. We're not doing this. And then he gives a directive, fine, all my people, throw them into the Nile. Throw the Israelite boys into the Nile. Keep the girls. But at the same time, we're seeing that they're still flourishing. That the blessing is still flourishing in them. So that's the really cool little bit here. We're going to go to Exodus 2 a little bit too. But that's just the first little bit of the narrative we're going to be getting with Exodus 1. Now we're going to look at, Caleb might have other notes, but at least for what I was prepping for today, we're going to look at Matthew 1 and 2 and how Matthew plays with this kind of language in his text. And we'll see that he takes this first chapter and combines them along with Exodus 2 into parts of this. But we're going to look at how Exodus 1 is being used by Matthew. So we'll go to Matthew 1 through 2. So again, this is not quite exactly the same thing, but right here we have a genealogy of Jesus. Now before with Exodus, what we saw, which was really cool, was that they were describing the 12 tribes specifically and the fruitful and the multiplying. Now, you could argue that part of what Matthew's doing is he's trying to show the lineage of Jesus. and where he comes from. You also, if you want to try to say that's connected to the first bit of Exodus, and I can say you can go back and forth with whether or not this is legit or not. But you're seeing this blessing of the fruitful and the multiplying as well, along with the lineage of Jesus. There's so much to talk about regarding this lineage stuff. For instance, like the key people who are in it, especially when it comes to the women, and how a lot of them aren't that are mentioned are not actually of Jewish descent. You know, you have um, let me find it. Let me see. I can't remember if it was in Luke or was in this one too. You got your wives. Well, Uriah's wife was, Jewish, but Bathsheba, and you have the issue that happened there. You get the mentioning of where is she? Here we go. Tamar. If I remember correctly, she wasn't Jewish, but she was married to um, Judah's son. And you also have where is okay, here we go. We got Ruth, who was a Moabite, which is interesting. That's really cool and fun. And there's one more. I think I just somehow missed it. I might be able to show it. Here we go. Rahab from the book of Joshua. So we got this really cool lineage where you have these really cool, awesome figures. You have Jesse, you got David, you got Abraham, you got Isaac, you got Jacob, who later became Israel. You got Judah. All these people, all these kings, all these men and women in their lives. And then when you get to the women, specifically, they are named, majority of them are not even Jewish women. They're outside of that people group. So you get this really cool thing. Anyways, that doesn't play into the whole Exodus narrative specifically. But we get this lineage. So you could argue, if you want to say that this is connected to, that Matthew's playing with this also in relation to Exodus, you could say that he's showing the fruitful multiplying in some essence. But really, it's going to be when we get to Joseph's dream, and more so when we get to chapter 2. Because in Joseph's dream, what we get is where this is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. I think a lot of us, if you grew up in church, you know about this narrative. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. And so we can keep on reading, but here's the cool thing here. Okay, so first off, we know that giving birth and having children is a blessing of itself, right? We know that all the way back from Genesis 1. What we also have is that this is supposed to be a blessing unto the world because of what Jesus is going to be coming to do according to the gospel. What he's going to do. So this is a blessing and as itself. It's a saving act. It's a blessing. It's a miracle. And it's fulfillment of prophecies. And so this is really cool. We're starting to get some of these things already building up. It's a really kind of discreet at first. And then when you hit chapter 2, you're like, bam. He's like, it's almost like if you're reading, you're like, wait a minute, is this pulling on Exodus stuff? And you get to chapter 2, like, yep, this is Exodus stuff. So that's a little background for chapter 1. I really want to get to chapter 2 specifically, but if anyone has any comments or thoughts regarding chapter 1 and the interesting stuff that's happening already, where he's kind of building up the case of making this the new Exodus through Jesus, feel free to let me know down below. I will be definitely taking in any comments that are specifically on topic, and that we can have some fun discussion, because I would love for this to be an interactive kind of thing we can do together. So I'll give you guys a minute to, if there's anything, if I don't see anything in like, I don't know, 30 more seconds, then I'll move on to chapter 2. It's like chapter 1 is kind of like beginning to build up the case for it. See. That's right. He'll call me the big gay. Text to lose. Speech to text loser. I said hi to chaos. And then I respond to Yehuda Yisrael. Yehuda Yisrael. 7910. All right. If nothing for now, then let's move on to chapter 2. Here's where we're going to get like beaten over the head with Matthew's like, Hey guys, this is Exodus again. So, we'll just read through chapter 2. This will be fun. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where's the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. That's interesting. Because it's like, what do you mean the king of the Jews has been born? We have a king. What do you mean the king? So they're kind of like, wait a minute, this is weird. And they're magi. They're not Jewish people. Um, they're people who use the constellations to kind of predict things and to figure things out. And this would be more of a typically an outside of Israel type of thing. So when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I may go and worship him." So, just to kind of build out what's going on here, if you are not sure already, yeah, they just figured out that this was something very divine, specific, and special. The people of that time would have been really good at Magi specifically at reading the stars. They kind of built a whole system for it. And when you see a brand new star, that kind of stands out. R.T. France, if I remember correctly, in his commentary, he did one for Tyndale and he did one for the New International Commentary on the New Testament. He goes into some interesting detail regarding how that kind of worked and what that looked like. So I would recommend checking that out. If you don't have like a collegiate account that gets you access to that for free, you would have to buy it. I think Logos and a few other places might have it on a sale right now. But the better way to get it would definitely be the free way to get it would be if you have a collegiate account that could get you tied into um, some of the scholarship behind this. And so RT France goes into good detail on this and what that looked like and how that worked within that culture and the backdrop for it. But they were really good at reading stars and telling stars. And so, because they studied the stars. So when a star just kind of brand new one appeared or shone brightly more than other in a very profound way, something interesting is happening because they just view stars as merely stars. They viewed it as a very divine and angelic type of thing that's being taken place. We kind of went over this a little bit too in our Ancient Near Eastern Cosmology series. It's about a 3-part series, technically 2, with one extra regarding stars in the Old Testament being described as an example. And so, if you want to look into that, I would definitely check that out. But they discern from the stars, and probably from anything else, discerning from the signs that this baby, they were convinced that this is the Messiah, that this is the anointed one, the King who is coming of Israel. Oh yeah, and I mean, yeah, you definitely see some back and forth in this weird, this push and pull, especially when you get into more towards the first century and getting towards the end of the Second Temple time period, and that definitely after you get into the second century AD, where you get that kind of shift. Like I said, they discerned something very spiritual and divine was taking place here, and so they would have gone forward and sought this out. And what they discerned was that there was a king that has been born and that the star was guiding them to this king. Now we don't know the exact specifics on what the Magi, you know, what they were thinking and all those kinds of things, but they pulled together like this is the king. And they discerned that it wasn't just a king. This is the king of the Jewish people who would be king over the Jews. And believed that they bowed to him as he was king to them as well. And so it wasn't just like he's the king of the Jews, but like he's king of the Jews and king of everything. and so they came to worship him. But yeah, it you see some of that controversy a little bit because there's some back and forth with some rabbinic interpretation because there is the back and forth of what does this Messiah look like? Does this Messiah suffer? Does Messiah not suffer? Were there two comings? Is there one coming? Is this Messiah divine? Is it not divine? And by divine, is it Yahweh or is it a spiritual being? And so that was the great question of Daniel 7 with late Second Temple Jewish literature, where they're trying to figure out who the Son of Man is in Daniel 7. And because they recognize the fact that when you have a person riding on the clouds. That was a very divine thing in the ancient Near East. You saw that in the Bible where they took that from Baal, where Baal is described as a cloud rider, and now is describing as the God of Israel is the cloud rider. And it's described that all over whenever mentions riding the heavens, riding the clouds. And then in Daniel 7, you see that it's a human who's riding the clouds. And they're like, whoa, we know about that like they were totally fine with the two powers in heaven until around the end of the first century is when they made that shift. But they were like, okay, it's not even just like there's an appearance of a man. This is a man. This is a man. What does that mean? And they're trying to figure that out. And then when Jesus comes, with the Magi and all these other signs, and Jesus claiming that he is the Son of Man, he's saying, I am that divine human. I am the human who is divine. And that's where you get the whole the incarnate Christ, the incarnate King, the incarnate Jesus, who is God and man. But yeah, there was definitely some big trying to figure out what that means. This idea of this one that's coming that would be king, but there's this divine element to him, but he's also man. What does that mean? Who is he? And so there was some controversy trying to figure out what that really looked like. And then now you have, oh, he's here. Well, you have the sons of Most High. Sorry, let me present. Well, you see in Daniel 7, you have the description of the fact that you have the monsters who come and are represented as these kingdoms, as the angel explains to Daniel. But then you have the fact that right after it describes that these monsters, these beasts come out, you then have the Ancient of Days, and the way he's described is matching that of El from Canaanite mythology, from Babylonian texts. And then he comes to sit on his throne. He's surrounded by all these figures and these thrones, and most scholars I've read through are pretty convinced that this is the surrounding the divine council, that he sits in the presence of the divine council. And he sits on his throne, and then in comes this Son of Man, and you get this description also of the fourth beast, being conquered and destroyed, and then you get the description of what these beasts represent. But you find that within Second Temple literature, they're very much confused who the Son of Man figure is. Daniel wasn't as confused about it. He didn't really spend time really harping on that. He spent a lot more time talking about who, what these beasts, trying to figure out what these beasts are. And yes, I know that they're not just a person. I literally just said that. Um, and so he sees these beasts, and he's trying to figure out what the heck these are. And then the angel describes that these are the kingdoms, and that there's gonna be one whose kingdom who that will never fall away, that will never fade away. There's this one figure that is coming who will be king over all. Um, mm, yes, yes, because that one is the one who will reign over the holy ones, over the kingdom, and that's the one that the Ancient of Days gives the kingdom over to, which is what we're getting to here. This is the Magi are kind of picking up on the fact that there's this divine king that is here, and the Israelites had this idea. The early Israelites had this idea, but they're trying to figure out who this was. Some postulated maybe it was an angel, maybe it was Adam, maybe it was a prophet, maybe it was Michael or Gabriel, maybe it's Enoch for all we know. And they're postulating a bunch of ideas, and then Jesus comes along and he's like, "Yeah, I'm the Son of Man. I'm the one who sits over the divine council," which means, and he describes all these things as himself. He's like, I am not. I am the King. I am the Messiah that's coming. I am the Son of Man that rode on the clouds of heaven. Like he specifies that in his standing before the Sanhedrin, that he isn't just the Son of Man. He came on the clouds of heaven, which is again a very divine language to use within the ancient Near East and within the Old Testament / Hebrew Bible. And then you get also the uh got the passage, John 10, where he describes himself as being the one that's over the divine counsel of Psalm 82 and Psalm 89, Daniel 7, 1 Kings, a variety of other places of this council where God sits over this council. Anyways, so now let's get into Matthew 2. So Matthew 2, we have the whole the Magi come. King Herod wants to kill this child. We haven't directly told that yet, but he's definitely threatened by this. And so he calls him secretly to go out and to find him so they can come back and tell him so he can kill them because he's threatened by this. He doesn't want there to be another king that rules over. So after they heard the king, let's go back to 7 actually. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." Right? So we already understand that this is, it's kept secret, and we're already getting the backdrop that this is not really what his intentions are. So we have a king who's threatened. All right. So this should sound familiar, right? We have a king who is being threatened by this blessing that has come. And his fear is that his kingdom will be overturned, that his power will be overthrown. And that's the fear of Pharaoh. And so we're getting this depiction of, oh, look, we have these two parallels. It gets more obvious, though. So after they heard the king, they went on their way. This would be the Magi, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned. Let me highlight, please. There we go. They returned to the country by another route. Right, so they are now being aware, like, okay, something sketchy is happening. Where we need to not go this direction. So we get to verse 13. Ignore this part right here. And it's supposed to help you for category. It doesn't really help you with always narrative because we keep going. When they had gone, this would be the Magi. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. So the Magi got a dream. Now Joseph gets a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Interesting. Here's why it's interesting. We'll come back here because this is going to tie a little bit into Exodus 2. Okay? So hold on to that. We're going to go back to Exodus 2 in a second. So we get this whole point where he gets this warning. And the reason is because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. Okay? Regains some more parallels here. And then we get into this little statement right here. So he got up and took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet. This is Hosea. Out of Egypt I called my son. Verse 16, when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious and gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem. Parallels again. We're targeting the young males. Now, specifically, those who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi, which we saw above, where the Magi give him this information because they're good at discerning the stars, and they discerned this timing based on the stars that he now knows when they are. And then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." All right, we're going to pause there. Okay. So within the Exodus 1 and the Matthew 1 and 2. Exodus 1, we see that the Israel is being blessed. They're blessing and flourishing greatly. And this is bringing up concern for the Pharaoh who has no real concern for Israel. And his real concern is not so much for them, but about them. He's concerned that they're going to rise up against him with his enemies. So then he goes and uses his wisdom, supposedly, and decides to kill all the boys and to oppress the people. You then have the women, the midwives, who are being directed to kill these boys, and they don't. They give a different reason for it, or they get out of it. and then he directs the people to go kill him. So we saw with Matthew that the Israelites, I said this, I admitted that this first little one is maybe a bit of a stretch, but verses 1 through 16, you see a blessing and flourishing of people, along with some other theological stuff that's being stated, and then you get into this whole the blessing that is coming of, or that's about to become, and in this case we get to chapter 2, has already come with the birth of Jesus, according to Matthew. Then you have magi who are discerning the stars, and they come, and there's a king who is in turmoil about the fact that there is this other king that has been born, and his concern is that his kingdom will be overthrown. So he's against that. He doesn't want that. And now he, meets him in private, says, "Hey, tell me where he is when you're back, just, help a guy out, help a brother out." And they're like, they're probably not really sure what's going on until they get there. They worship the Jesus, and then they get a dream. So they go a different way. Interesting. So the people that were directed by the king to bring him information or to do this task don't do that task. They go a different way now that they know more. The magi go away. The midwives don't kill the boys. Because some other parallels here. Now, here's where in my opinion, all this is really beautiful and really cool. Matthew's doing. He's trying to take all this Exodus language and tying together to describe the birth of Jesus within these first two chapters. I think that's really cool what he's doing here. Matthew, being a tax collector, he would have been somewhat literate, and so he's being, really crafty with his language, especially because he knows that his primary audience is to Jewish people who are deeply involved in studying Torah, and they hold this very tightly. And so he's writing this, and they're like, they would see and be like, "Whoa, this is crazy." The way you're comparing what Jesus is going through, and this is not uncommon for the biblical authors. Like I said, there's many books on this, but the three I recommend right here, the two Echoes of Exodus books by different authors. I just find it funny they're the same name because they came out the same year, so that's why they could avoid copyright. And then Exodus Old and New by L. Michael Morales, tracing this literary discussion from Genesis all the way through to through the New Testament. So if you want to look more into like how the Old Testament plays with this language, they go into that as well. I think Bible Project, I think they go a slightly different direction, but they play this as well with a podcast known as the Exodus Way, and they're developing some of those motifs and kind of showing you how they play out. But anyways, so we see a lot of this language. We see that there's a king who is in fear, in his desire to get what he wants to do. He sends out these people to go kill him or to bring him information. And in both cases, you either have midwives who kind of say, "Oh, we can't do it. They're producing too much," or you have the magi who are saying, "No, they just go a completely different direction." They get the message and they just leave, so they don't fulfill that directive. Then you get where was I? You get the okay. Now we're killing all these boys, which would have been his own people. So he's killing all these boys, these young ones. In Egypt they would have been babies. In this case, these would also be babies, 2 and younger. And now we get into what I think is kind of cool. If we go back to Exodus 2, and we'll come back to Matthew 2 as well. While I'm pulling this up, if anyone has any other comments, reflections, or things you think you might be noticing regarding the parallels, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. And I would love to just kind of hear your thoughts and reflections on what's going on right now regarding this. I think is a really cool study, regardless if you're a Christian or not. Seeing how people use literature to describe things and how they're using Exodus language to describe Jesus, I think is just fascinating and really, really cool. So if anyone has anything else they want to throw in the chat, please just let me know down below. And I'll give you guys a couple seconds before I move on to what I think is kind of cool. As a heads up, we might go a little later than 9:30. I was originally going to cap around there, but depends on if you get anything else in the chat as we go. All right, I don't think we're getting anything right now. That's fine. If you're typing still, I'll keep an eye out for the comment section. Oh yeah. Typology is really cool, especially when you can see how masterfully done it is, especially with texts that are spread out over such a long period of time. And I can understand that. I can understand what you're going for, what you're trying to say here. At this point, I'm not using this as proof text. I'm using this as a we're seeing Exodus language to describe the mission of Jesus Christ. The New Testament Christians, the uh, the Jews who were Christians, especially at this point in time within the first century, very much saw what Jesus is doing as the greater Moses as promised, as the new Exodus, but is not just on a geographical scale where you're leaving one nation to go to another. Which I'm not downplaying that at all. Like that, we did the whole Chaos Water series podcast, looking at how as a recreation moment for Israel. And a decreation moment for Egypt, and all the things that are going on with the plagues and the divine language showdowns happening. So I'm not downplaying that at all, but they're definitely seen as like is not just a geographical thing, but it's this grandiose spiritual thing that has come. That the kingdom of God has arrived, and so they're using this language to say, look, Jesus, what he's doing is the brand new Exodus. This is the Exodus on the not just a local scale, but on the globalized, universal kind of scale. And the idea that is like breaking all time, breaking all boundaries is not just like is not just in one place. It's global. It's all over. So why don't we ride on through Exodus 2? This is where I think is kind of cool what Matthew does here. But we're gonna first look at what um, Moses does here. We won't for now. Um, Sure, and I can understand that. I can understand that the question then is going to become: are they correct in doing that, or are they incorrect in doing that? Today is not the point of that discussion. That can be for our Thursday discussions. Um, but I understand that is a hang up for some modern Jewish people. Um, I'm not going to say for all because maybe not all really kind of know about the typology stuff. But for some, I'm sure they're like, I'm not sure about. They're not convinced by it. So I can understand that. But like I said, that we'll save that conversation about whether it's true or not for a later day. Anyways, so we won't go necessarily into uh um we'll go a little bit into here. I kind of want to save some stuff in Exodus 2 for when Caleb's back so I can have another person present with me for this dialogue. Not that I don't love dialoguing with you guys in the comment section, but have someone I can actually hear the voice of in this. So I'll save some of the stuff. We'll try and say, how about this? We'll try and say study done by 9:30 ish, based on my clock, and then I can stay on for like another extra couple minutes, to kind of hear some reflections, and then we'll cap it off for the night. And Lord willing, we'll see you guys all Thursday. But we'll pick up here. So chapter 2, verse 1. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. She placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. This is calling back a little bit to Genesis 6 through 9. You don't get the waters, like covering back over and being separated again. You don't get the recreation and decreation, the undoing of Genesis 1, the redoing of Genesis 1, like you do with the flood. But you get this whole thing. There's a little arc, there's a little mini arc floating across the water that is supposed to be saving the life that is on board to new life, to life um, uh, outside of the chaos, outside of death, not being caught up in death. So this is kind of cool. I love seeing how even within the first 5 books, the Torah, how they just keep playing with this language from like the first like 2 chapters, and then with the actually really the first 11 chapters of Genesis, and they're playing with all this language to describe all these events. It's really really fascinating what they do here. We don't give the ancient people enough credit for like of course, we believe that Jews who don't believe in the Holy Spirit would believe that God divinely inspired and guided them. At least the Jews that I know of, and then Christians we believe the Holy Spirit is specifically the one guiding them. And so either way, God guiding them. So we have a divine author working through these human authors, but using human authors that with this language, it's just fascinating. We don't give people enough credit. We don't give God enough credit. Honestly, we sometimes either underappreciate the text in terms of its human and divine author, or we completely ignore how the divine author works. And it's unfortunate sometimes the way we do that. Anyways, we were at verse 4. So his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Verse 5. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying. She felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew old, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. We're going to keep going, though, because we're going to go back to Matthew 2, and we'll stick there for a little bit. One day after Moses had gone up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. And he saw an Egyptian being a Hebrew, one of his own people. And, and we know the story. He kills the man, and then later he sees two Hebrews fighting, and then he says, "Why are you hitting a fellow Hebrew?" And they're like, "What are you gonna do? You're gonna kill us like you killed the Egyptian?" And he's like, "Shoot! They know that I killed the guy." And then he books it. So he exits Egypt. And then we know later, I'm gonna get a little ahead of myself here. So he exits Egypt. And if we skip ahead a little bit, we're going to come back to those passages later. He then comes back into Egypt to then bring the people out of Egypt again. So what we get here is that Moses is put on this little ark to be saved from Egypt's oppression, to then be saved by someone in Egypt, or by Egypt in some capacity, to then escape Egypt, and then he'll later come back and leave Egypt again. So here's where there's some other cool things that are happening with Matthew. Where is it? Here we go. He escaped to Egypt. When they had gone, an angel the Lord said to Joseph in a dream, get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. Okay, so they're escaping from the oppression. What's interesting is that the initial escape is from Egypt, from Moses, from the hands of Egypt. In this case, there's an inversion where Jesus has his save, like the saving of Jesus' family and him as a baby is to go to Egypt. So we get an inversion here. The land of God's people is now the place that is not safe. That's the place of oppression. Versus in Egypt, it was that place. So they want to get out of Egypt. In this case, he's going to Egypt. There's a weird inversion here. But at the same time, this also matches the motif, because who is the person that pulls Moses out of the water? An Egyptian woman who is Pharaoh's daughter. Well, in this case, so it's it's Egypt in some capacity that also saves, as the figure is being used to save. And now you have Egypt, again, that's being used as a place to save. So there's a weird mixture of it's an inversion, but also in line with the motif. And it's really kind of fascinating how he's playing into both at the same time. It's like, so he escapes into Egypt, kind of like how, Moses is put into the water, and then an Egyptian woman, Pharaoh's daughter, is the one who pulls him out. But also it's an inversion. Before, it was the land of Egypt is oppressing God's people, and now the land of God's people is oppressing the one that is to be the king. And then you get into this next little bit where he says that, so he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet. Again, this is Hosea. Out of Egypt I called my son. And so there, Matthew's saying not only is this an Exodus moment, this is also tying to Hosea, where now you have God's son is coming out of Egypt. And so this one who's going to represent Israel, which he's going to be the new Moses and the new Israel. He's going to be like representing both in this literary style, is being called out of this place, of which, before, again, in the Old Testament was a place of oppression, a place of destruction, a place of death. But this time, Jesus is going there. He's being brought there to preserve his life. I think it's really interesting how Matthew's playing a little bit with both. Maybe I'm overemphasizing the exact parallel of Pharaoh's daughter and Egypt itself. There's definitely the inversion here. The inversion is not deniable, in my opinion. But the Pharaoh's daughter thing, I think you could argue back and forth for that. I think it's kind of cool to see how Matthew's playing with both. But then you get towards the bottom, where we get the whole thing with Herod. Herod seeks to kill him, and then Herod dies. And then we have an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead. Now that's interesting because yes, Herod is of course making this whole thing, but take this child and mother go to the land of Israel. For those, this is plural. This entire time in the narrative, we have a very specific person that's being focused on, which is Herod, and now we're getting a whole plural. So we're getting the fact that there's more going on here, and there's more people than just Herod that are seeking after him. And I think this is kind of interesting how this entire time has been a singular person, and now we're getting a plural person. I won't go too deep into that right now, just due to time. But I think that's really interesting and is worth exploring. I can't remember. I may post in the description later, which I can't remember the top of my head, which scholar kind of draws some attention and how he sees this as tying into Egypt as well. Um, so he got up and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets that he would be called a Nazarene. So now we have that he has gone into Egypt and he's gone out of Egypt in terms of his actual geographical location. But also he's escaped Egypt in terms of Herod, the oppressor. Um, and then you have now we get okay. So Jesus is kind of being set up as this Moses and Israel, more specifically Moses in this case. And then we're going to see how Matthew plays into this language throughout the rest of the book, to amongst other language as well, because he was a very brilliant Jew, a brilliant writer, and we'll see how there is the what's what I'm looking for. You see how he plays into this being the great Exodus on the more than just the localized, the geographical scale, but now on this really broad, breaching into the Gentiles as well, as we see with his ministry. And so that's an introduction, I think, to what's going on here. There's so much we could talk about here. I know it'd be a greater benefit if I had Caleb or one of my buddies to just kind of bounce off ideas, maybe to catch something I didn't catch, or to kind of explain something else a little bit further. But I hope that this kind of gets a little bit of interest into the topic that we're going to be getting into on our Tuesdays for the next little bit. And we're going to keep going with this in the next few weeks. We'll pick up with the next set of chapters. Caleb and I are going to go over where we're going to go with that now that I've finished this out, and to see if he wants to go back and pick up anything that he's taken down in his notes that maybe I didn't catch before, or maybe he'll want to be like, want to move on. And so he and I will meet about what that's going to look like. He forgot that he wasn't going to be able to be here for today, unfortunately. But anyways, that's some really cool things I think Matthew's doing, and using Exodus language to describe the birth of Jesus and the beginning of his whole narrative. And so, I think for the next, let's say, a couple minutes, if you have any other reflections down below or comments regarding this narrative, things that you're picking up on, maybe things you're like, whoa, I never noticed it before, or whoa, that's really cool, or hey, did you ever think about this? And regarding that and some of those ties, I would love to kind of hear them. Just let me know down below before I close out for the night. I'll stay on for like a few more minutes. Check Twitch. Sometimes Twitch, we get followers, but it doesn't always send me their comments, and it's unfortunate that doesn't always work out that way. So let me quickly check. Nothing I need to respond to right now, looks like. Cool. Looks like YouTube, we're chilling. And so yeah, if you guys have any comments regarding on this little introduction to the study, I know we covered a lot of stuff within Exodus 1 and 2 and Matthew 1 and 2. I think it's really cool stuff, what Matthew does. Of course, as a Christian, I believe the Holy Spirit did through Matthew, the human, and the divine author through the human author. But of course, I know we have a Jew in here who disagrees with that theology, so I understand that. So I'm saying that as a Christian specifically. So if anyone else has any thoughts regarding that whole conversation that we've had today, feel free to let me know. And if not, we'll do our closeout stuff. Maybe I'll just say it again while people are leaving comments. This one I've read very recently. I love Michael Morales' work, and the way he describes biblical language and describing motifs. He did the same thing for. Oh, it's over on my other shelf. That's not reachable right now. He did another one regarding the mountain and tying that with temple and how, and Leviticus specifically, and its narrative and literary placement within the Torah as the center, and with the center at the center being the Day of Atonement and a variety of other things that are being laid out, of which, unfortunately, I don't know if we'll get there because it fits into the narrative of what we're talking about in the stream. Also, kind of goes a little outside the narrative. The Sermon on the Mount plays into almost like the Torah, specifically almost kind of like Leviticus in some ways, with its literary construction. Another one that I did read was Echoes of Exodus by Alastair J. Roberts and Andrew Wilson. I will say that I got probably the 1 in a million copy that had a printing issue where because I have a new copy that came in and it doesn't have the issue, and I've checked all the reviews and I haven't seen at least on Amazon and not a single one other person has issue. So it must have just been like one, like a bunch. But it's funny. You go definitely a printing issue. It goes all the way to page 79, and then you turn the page and it goes back to 49, and it stays like that until it gets to page gets to page 79 again, and it jumps to 113. So I had Amazon send me a new one, and it has no issues. I just need to go put all my highlights that were in this one and that one, and read the pages that I didn't get to read. And then this one I'm gonna be starting when I finish another book that I'm reading, Echoes of Exodus by Bryan and Estelle. What's cool about this one is it's gonna be like this one, but it's gonna be a thicker version. And I think what's cool is that some of the people that got to do the endorsement or like the review stuff on the back are scholars that I really do love reading from or listening to, and so it's kind of nice to see that this is the work that they promote and like. So it's kind of cool. Of course, you don't need to read that kind of stuff to kind of find these narratives, but I like using them because it kind of helps me catch the things I didn't see the first time, or maybe things I might have missed, or help me kind of see more of the things that could be there. All right, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat right now. So in that case, I'm gonna start doing some of our closeout stuff. We'll start with some reminders and updates. On tomorrow is Wednesday, so tomorrow we have our continuing series on the Chaos Monsters. We have our episode coming out with that, where it will be spending some time looking at Judges and First Samuel, specifically looking at Deborah and Yael, and then looking at with David and Goliath, and looking at the literary discussion that's being had there, describing their enemies as serpentine figures. We then have, Lord willing, on Thursday, another stream that will be, I think, more Caleb-led. I believe I made the block for it already that should be seen on YouTube. He's prepping a messianic polemic, I think it was, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, and then if I'm wrong, that wasn't his intention, then I'll have to make a new session. But I think that's what he said he was doing based on the text I received. And then if you're curious about the Jewish apologetic polemic, the following Thursday we'll be doing a response video to a video that was recommended to us. So we'll be doing that. And then the week after will be a polemic that will be led by me. And then the week after, I'm not sure I think of Friday. The Thursday after will be another response video. I think Tovia Singer is what Caleb said he found a video he wants to do for that one. Then this Friday will be my background to First Peter. It's gonna be a little bit different than Caleb's Ephesus one, just because. First Timothy one regarding Ephesus, just because it's a region of churches that Peter's writing to, so it's not like just one place. It's a few different places, and there's not a ton in the specifics that's going on there. Within like the specifics of like Pontus or the specifics of Bithynia, for First Peter's time, but we're seeing there's some scholarship regarding what's happening within that region under Rome, and so what it seems to be what's going on with Peter's letter. So I'll be getting to that a little bit, and then Saturday we'll have like a clip or two from our streams. And then we'll be, Lord willing, back next Tuesday doing this. And then on Monday will be the beginning of our mountain podcast, where we'll be tracing mountains beginning with Genesis 2, with Garden of Eden, and how it is being described as a mountain, and how Ezekiel looks back on that. And we're skipping Genesis 1 for now. We'll go back to that. Um, but yeah. Comment. My approach isn't the same as Tovia Singer's. In fact, I made my channel to go deeper into the areas that Tovia doesn't within the Jewish Christian debate. Cool. I think I saw some of that. I got to watch a couple videos just to kind of get a feel. I wasn't really looking at it with like debating eyes or ears. I was just kind of curious and like, okay, style, focus, and all those kinds of things. So I think kind of picked up on um, some of the directions that you go differently than Singer. But Caleb wanted to do one of yours and one of Singer's at the end. So, and that'll be it for January. We'll move on to our next Thursday series, our focus for the month in February. But that's everything that's coming out. So if you are here on the stream live with me tonight, thank you for joining us. I appreciate all the comments and the time you guys spent with us. Feel free to come back. Did I say Thursday? I can't remember. I'm going to just start over anyways, just in case. Thank you for joining me tonight on our Tuesday stream. If you enjoyed this, we look forward to doing more of this. I encourage you to come back with your Bible, and read up on Exodus, in the next few chapters in Exodus and Matthew, and see if you can find some parallels. And I would love to see that as we're having a discussion with Caleb, that you could come in and you could comment with some of the things that you're seeing too. Maybe things that we're going to be getting to, or things that we or maybe we missed, and you can kind of have this nice little discussion. We want this to be kind of interactive for our Tuesday streams, and then, so yeah, thank you for joining me. I guess specifically, Lord willing, Caleb will be back, and I'm excited to continue to do this. I love doing this stuff more and more. I do love apologetics still, but I've grown to really love doing biblical studies, because it kind of builds up your ability to do apologetics. You're able to do apologetics for your faith if you know your text well, and you're able to do exegesis and figure out what's eisegesis and exegesis, or all the fun literary stuff. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate your time. If you're joining in with us later on the recordings, I know a lot of people have been doing that. I hope you guys are able to find this fruitful. Please join us next time if you're able to on a stream, Lord willing, so we can get to interact with you live. I would love to do that. My desire is to build up a community. I know we're still small. Caleb keeps saying, hey, all channels start small and they slowly grow. It's not going to be always quick. And I said, that's fine. I know, because we're not doing a niche. Like David Wood or Mike Winger or Inspiring Philosophy or Tovia Singer, or a variety of people where they have a really specific focus. We kind of go broad. We kind of just cover a lot of things. So I know the algorithm doesn't love that, but I hope you guys join us in the future if you can. And I would love to build a community to have these discussions and to grow together, and to love on each other and to bless each other. And so, with all that said, Lord willing, I will see you live on Thursday. And yeah, that's it, really. Peace out, deuce out. Yeah, that's all I got.